Hey, so I recently made a video about what living in the end with money sort of looked like. And I talked a little bit about how, I was always kind of like pushing forward to the next thing and, acting in my outer reality to sort of move forward. And I wanted to talk about some of the similarities, like how that sort of progressed with the weight loss thing, which was a much bigger issue with me. It was a much bigger identity problem for me than the money thing was. I had a much easier time identifying as somebody who sort of belonged in the state of having a lot of money, partly because of just the way I grew up. Money wasn't an issue in my family. It wasn't talked about. There wasn't any worries about being able to afford anything. I wasn't aware of money growing up almost at all. In fact, the only thing I was aware of was that we had plenty. Like if I ever, I can't remember an instance of this, but I'm 100% certain, because I can almost like hear her voice saying it. If I ever brought up a concern about money to my mom, her response would have been, "You don't need to worry about that. Just focus on school," or whatever. She would just be like, everything is fine. There's no concern there. So that's kind of how I ended up identifying it, while I was going through the whole money thing. It was pretty easy for me to just kind of hear myself saying, "You don't have to worry about it. Just focus on the business." You know what I mean? Like it was a natural thing for me to identify with, despite my dismal finances in my outer reality, which at one point were like minus $80,000. So it was easy for me once I understood Neville Goddard, The Science of Getting Rich. Once I understood how the mentality affects the reality, it was very easy in that area for me to just kind of snap into place. Like, oh, okay, I get it. So it was easy. With the weight thing, which is the other thing I've been really incredibly and unusually successful with. Most people don't do what I've done with this, which is why I feel good to talk about it. Sort of, I've experienced the whole thing start to finish, and I can sort of tell you what happened. For the longest time, I had the best plans for how I was going to do it, and I could not execute. Like, I know everything there is to know about weight loss and dieting and what diets are good for what and all that stuff. Like, my problem was not a lack of knowledge. For most people, it's not. It was simply that I couldn't seem to unidentify with the me that was 190, okay? The me that was 190 had a few key things. First of all, I could not stop myself from eating at night. There was just something there that made me want to perpetuate the situation, is the best thing that I can come up with to say. Like, I would have a successful day where I stuck to whatever I was planning to do, and then at night, for a variety of reasons, some part of me would just be like, no, I don't want this to change, and I'm gonna do all the things that will keep it exactly the same. Like, there was a mechanism there. I don't know what that was exactly, but it was something I actually had to white knuckle my way through for a while in the beginning. So there was that. That was a part of 190 me. And another part of 190 me was, I had this firm, like, I was hell-bent that you do not have to stop eating fast food or stop eating at restaurants in order to lose weight. I just ate every meal at a fast food restaurant, basically from the day I got my driver's license until April of 2018, when I started to, that was like when I actually started the downward slope from 190 to the 1-teens. And what I did, essentially, the pivotal thing that happened, aside from the fact that for about 4 or 5 months prior to this, I had decided and forced myself to go through the very expensive, very painful process of getting every dental problem I had fixed. I had been like I'd gone to the dentist like 3 or 4 times over 20 years, and I had a ton of metal fillings in my mouth from the 90s, and those things only last like 15 years. So basically, a filling broke out of one of my teeth. I went to the dentist, who is a family member of mine, and he basically said, listen, you need to have all of this. You need to get all of these metal fillings replaced. And he's like, you have, you know, this little broken filling down here is not really the issue in your mouth. You have like a major thing going on in this tooth. We need to fix this right away. You know, I had to have $16,000 worth of dental work done. Thankfully, like, my teeth were not horrible outwardly. But like structurally, this seems like a metaphor for the rest of my life. Structurally, they were on the verge. Like, there was a lot that needed. I'm just like, you know what? I'm like, okay, let's do this. And I had a dentist appointment every 2 weeks for all the way from January to July. And I'm not sure that I can convey exactly the hellacious experience that was. You know, when you're in the dentist with your mouth open, it takes like a week to recover, for me anyway. I have a tiny mouth. It takes a week for me to recover just from having my jaw open and from all the Novocaine shots. Side bonus is that my mouth is very difficult to numb because there's some nerve bundle that's in a weird place on this side of my mouth. So anyway, I always had to have like a million Novocaine shots in order to finally find it. And it was just like, I couldn't chew, I couldn't, you know, I had like throbbing pain from things healing. It was a nightmare. And after that experience where I had forced myself to do this, you know, it was hellacious, but it was for my own good. I did it for my own good. And I finally made a good choice in this area. And after months and months of this, I just said, you know what, I have to do that. You know, I can do this. If I can force myself to do this in the dental area where I am a super phobe, where I have to take like a milligram of Xanax just to walk into the place, if I can do this, I can do that about my weight. You know, I looked around my life. I looked around my view of myself with my weight and everything else, and I said, this does not match. I am disciplined. I'm incredibly successful. I just forced myself to face up to my biggest phobia, essentially, and get in the dentist chair every 2 weeks for 6 months. You know, this identity as a failure at controlling my weight and my eating and this part of my life does not match. It no longer fits here. I don't match with this anymore. This is not a part of my current identity. This is some old vestige of another time. And I realized, you know, I had this very memorable, like, come to Jesus meeting with myself, and my identity shifted right then. I just said, this isn't me. Oh my God, like, it's true. This is true. This isn't me. This doesn't fit. Like, I'm not this person. This person is like somebody that doesn't belong in this picture. And so I had this very strong identity shift. But the way that ended up playing out, and I knew when I felt that, I was like, okay, it's a matter of time now. I know it, because when your identity changes, your outer reality changes. It just does. And I knew, okay, the weight problem is solved. Like, at the highest level, right? At the top belief level, I knew this problem is solved, because the major problem is solved. The identity problem is solved. So therefore, it is simply a matter of time before I get from where I am now to where I belong, which is where I am right now. Like, this was the person I started to identify with in that moment. And of course it evolved over time, because I hadn't had any recent experience being me. But what that ended up looking like in the outer reality was that I had to slowly start to, and if I had been conscious of this, maybe it could have been faster, but I slowly had to let go of all of the behaviors that went with that weight. I ate every meal out for 20 years, you know, fast food. I was like going, not even fast, like Subway, Panera, like all these places where it was like part of my daily routine and almost like part of my identity to go out and do this thing, go out and get this food and eat it. In my mind, I was like, okay, well, I don't really have to change that. You know, the calorie counts are on the website. All I really have to do is, you know, all I really have to do is just reduce my intake and start exercising a lot. And I could still go like get my, you know, this certain type of food and it's fine. And what I quickly found was I did that and it worked to some degree because, you know, I was so heavy that any reduction and any increase in exercise, any reduction in intake was going to produce a result, you know, but eventually I hit a wall when I was like maybe 30 pounds into it. I hit a wall, and though I was hitting my, what I thought were my targets, I stopped losing weight. And, you know, at that point, there were some crises mentally. I was like, you know, oh my God, am I just cursed? You know, is it just not possible for my body to weigh less than 160? You know, like I had all these thoughts that were very like scary and I entertained them and I considered, you know, luckily I had my ex around. He's just like, what, are you crazy? No, you're doing something wrong. And I eventually figured out, you know, because at that point I was like, oh, well, how do I really know what's in this food? Like when I get a chicken salad sandwich from Panera and it says on the website it has 600 calories, it's probably more like it has 1,000. There's probably a severe, you know, area of margin of error here. You know, there's a human being like putting stuff on this sandwich. How do they know what it really, you know, it just like occurred to me that I was being dumb. It just occurred to me that I was totally missing that, you know, when you go out and eat at a restaurant, when you go out and eat fast food, these places are not there for your health. They are there to taste good so that you continue to come back, and they're there to make profit. Like that's what they exist for. And so you can, I think, if you want to get to your ideal weight, like your behavior, in my opinion, is not going to be comprised, if you're a small woman, your behavior is not going to be comprised much of going out and eating things that you don't know. You know, you don't know the ingredients, you don't know how it was prepared, you don't know how much is actually sitting on your plate. When you start weighing food, that is going to be a rude awakening because things weigh twice as much as you think they do. You put a tablespoon of peanut butter into a tablespoon and you scoop it out and it weighs twice what it says it should weigh. Literally, a tablespoon of peanut butter on the nutrition label says that it's 30 grams. Every time I've ever put a tablespoon of peanut butter into an actual tablespoon, then scooped it out and weighed it, it weighed like 55 or 60. So when I hit that wall, I realized certain things were gonna have to change. I could stay at 160 and continue to eat the way I was eating, or I was gonna have to let go of that behavior. That's how it played out for me. And, you know, at this point, I just had, you know, an interesting several months long sort of foray back into, you know, not being so conscious of everything I'm eating. And it's really interesting. It was enlightening. It was really obvious to me how much my behavior has changed. First of all, I had a couple days when Steve was staying with me in lockdown where I absolutely went back to my old behavior, where I was just like, how much can I eat today? What can I, you know, I'm going to enjoy myself today just by eating whatever I want. And literally I'd be laying there and I go, hey, there's cookies in the kitchen. Get up and go eat. Like, that's not me anymore. I did that a couple days and I'm just like, what is this? Like, this is old behavior. Like, this isn't me. I don't even want to be doing this. Why am I doing it? It's like I was just doing it to do it. That changed. I noticed that. And even when I'm not paying attention to how many calories I'm eating, like if I'm not counting things or weighing things, I just eat less and I eat differently. You know, I don't eat as much, first of all. And, you know, like occasionally I want to eat a pizza or something, but you know, when I eat pizza now, it's so heavily associated with a different version of myself that it just, you know, it just doesn't do for me what I think it used to. I think this is how normal people enjoy food. It's just like, okay, I'll eat some, but it's not like scratching an itch, or I don't know what it used to do for me, but it doesn't do it for me anymore. You know, the behaviors have changed, and, you know, eating certain types of food and certain amounts of food and making sure I'm not eating too much is just, it's so natural to me at this point, that it makes sense to me why, when I went off the rails essentially since January, I was very concerned about what the outcome was going to be. When I went off the rails in January, essentially, when Steve and I started spending time together and we started going out and eating a lot, and, you know, he likes to cook, so, between that and the lockdown food madness, I was like 115 when it started, and I ended up about 125. You know, I have gained like 40 pounds in 3 months before. That was how I originally got to 190, was I went from 160 to 190 in a matter of months. And, you know, it just didn't happen that way. Like, it just, the mentality is so different, and my identity is so firmly where it needs to be. Like, this is me. You know, as I lost the weight and got lower and lower, I felt more and more like I was myself. And the identity is so firmly rooted that the behaviors match. And that was a process. But I wanted to just talk about this because I know weight loss is a big thing for people. I don't know if that's the big reason that people are looking for stuff about this on YouTube. I think a lot of people are looking for specific person stuff on YouTube, but I've gotten a couple of requests lately to talk about this, and it's really just a parallel to any other thing that you're changing. In my world, this has been how it's worked. Processes of getting successful in any area for me have involved changing from the identity of the thing that's been causing the outward reality to be what it is, changing into the things that match up with the outer reality being what you want. You know, I didn't imagine my metabolism burning 5,000 calories a day. Could I have done that? I don't know. I don't care. I'm glad that I am where I am. I'm glad that I didn't spin my wheels with that or experiment with that, because, you know, there was value in the journey. There's value in being able to tell you how I did this. There's value in the experience. So I just wanted to put that out there and hope that it reaches somebody who is struggling to change the outer reality, changing the identity and allowing the behaviors to change is really what has to happen.